Montana Territory, 1865. The brutal winter had finally released its grip on the Bitterroot Valley, where the snow-capped mountains stood sentinel over vast stretches of untamed land. Weston Young believed that the frontier demanded solitude from a man. At 24, he had already learned that attachment only led to heartbreak in a land where death lurked behind every blizzard, drought, and mountain lion track. A man needs nothing but his horse, his rifle, and enough sense to stay away from trouble, he often told himself while working his modest cattle ranch. It was a mantra that had served him well since his parents died of fever 3 years prior, leaving him alone with 200 acres, 60 head of cattle, and the crushing weight of solitude. Weston had the kind of face that made townsfolk's daughters blush, strong jawlines softened by youthful cheeks, eyes the color of summer sage, and sandy brown hair that curled at the nape of his neck. But he kept to himself, riding into the nearby settlement of Pine Creek only when necessity demanded, trading cattle and picking up supplies without lingering for socialization. His ranch sat at the edge of contested territory, where settler claims butted against Apache lands. The uneasy peace had held for nearly 2 years, though rumors of skirmishes to the south kept tension high. Weston wanted no part in the conflicts. He simply wanted to be left alone, to build his herd, and to survive another year on the unforgiving frontier. What he truly needed, though he would sooner shoot his own foot than admit it, was someone to share the burden of frontier life, to fill the deafening silence of his cabin with conversation, to remind him that surviving meant more than simply not dying. The spring rains had come early that year, turning the mountain paths into treacherous slides of mud. Weston was checking fence lines along his eastern boundary when he heard it, a sound that didn't belong among the natural symphony of the forest. A high-pitched scream, human and terrified, carried on the wind. He hesitated. Involving himself in others' troubles was exactly the kind of thing he avoided. Yet something, perhaps the last remnants of his humanity not yet hardened by frontier isolation, made him turn his horse toward the sound. The scene unfolded in a clearing near a creek bed. A young Apache girl, no older than 9 or 10, had climbed halfway up a pine tree. Below, 3 gray wolves circled, occasionally leaping against the trunk, their jaws snapping at her dangling feet. Her moccasin was torn, blood trickling down to stain the bark. Weston didn't think, he acted. His rifle came up, the report echoing through the valley as the first wolf dropped. The remaining 2 turned toward this new threat, and he fired again, hitting one in the shoulder. It yelped and retreated. The third wolf held its ground, snarling, until Weston's horse charged forward and it finally slunk away into the underbrush. The girl clung to the tree, dark eyes wide with terror and uncertainty. She wore a deerskin dress with geometric patterns, her long black hair in 2 braids. "It is safe now," Weston called up, keeping his voice gentle. "The wolves are gone." She didn't move, eyeing him with the same wariness she'd shown the predators. Weston dismounted slowly. "I will not hurt you. Are you lost? Where is your family?" The girl finally spoke, her English halting but clear. "Hunting party. We separated in storm yesterday." "You are far from your people's territory," Weston observed, understanding dawning. "The storm must have driven you north." She nodded once, still not moving from her perch. "Your foot is bleeding. I can help," he offered, holding out his hand. "My ranch is not far." The decision seemed to cost her greatly, but finally, hunger and pain won out over fear. She climbed down carefully, wincing when her injured foot touched the ground. Weston lifted her onto his horse with ease, noticing how thin she was. "My name is Weston Young," he said. "I am Little Deer," she replied, her voice barely audible. At his ranch, Weston cleaned and bandaged her wound, gave her jerky and bread, and watched as exhaustion claimed her. She fell asleep by his fire, curled like a small animal. The next morning, he saddled his horse. "I will take you back to your people," he promised. They rode south for hours until they encountered an Apache hunting party frantically searching for the missing child. The warriors regarded Weston with suspicion until Little Deer explained what had happened. The eldest hunter stepped forward. "You returned our chief's daughter when you could have done otherwise," he said. "We will remember this." As Weston turned to leave, Little Deer caught his sleeve. "I will not forget," she said solemnly, with a gravity beyond her years. Riding back to his empty ranch, Weston tried to dismiss the encounter. Yet something had shifted inside him, a crack in the wall of isolation he'd built. He quickly patched it over, returning to his solitary existence, telling himself the strange warmth he'd felt when the child had trusted him meant nothing. Montana Territory, 1880. 15 years had hardened Weston Young in some ways and softened him in others. At 39, his face had weathered into handsome maturity, laugh lines appearing at the corners of his eyes despite his determination to remain untouched by emotion, his once sandy hair now darker with strands of silver at the temples. His ranch had grown to nearly 600 acres, with a herd respectable enough to earn him grudging respect from other cattlemen. He had never married, never courted, continuing to believe that attachment was a weakness the frontier would exploit. Yet the complete isolation of his youth had gradually given way to cautious participation in community life. He attended the occasional barn raising or harvest festival, though he always left early, before the dancing began. The growing settlement of Pine Creek had become a proper town with a church, school, and 3 saloons. Tensions with the Apache had waxed and waned over the years, with treaties signed and broken, but Weston's ranch had remained largely untouched by conflict, perhaps due to its location, perhaps due to something else he didn't care to examine too closely. He was in town that October day, selling 3 prime steers and purchasing supplies for winter, when he heard the murmurs ripple through the dusty street. Apache delegation coming, bringing the new chief, requesting passage through to meet with the army. Weston paid little attention. Indian affairs were government business, not his concern. He was loading flour and coffee into his wagon when the delegation rode into town. 8 riders on painted ponies, wearing a mix of traditional dress and practical frontier clothing acquired through trade. They rode proudly, ignoring the stares and whispers of the townspeople who gathered on porches and in doorways. At their head rode a figure whose presence commanded attention, straight-backed and regal on a magnificent black stallion. Unlike the others, this rider wore full traditional dress, a buckskin outfit adorned with intricate beadwork, a single eagle feather and long, glossy black hair. Only when the delegation halted in front of the mayor's office did Weston realize with a start that the leader was a woman. She swung down from her horse with fluid grace, revealing herself to be perhaps 24 or 25 years old, with a face that combined striking beauty with unmistakable authority. "I am Jana Blackfoot," she announced in perfect English, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent street. "Chief of the Eastern Apache. I have come to speak with your officials about safe passage for my people through the northern hunting grounds." The mayor emerged, flustered and clearly unprepared to negotiate with a female chief. "Now see here, we deal with the men of your tribe, you deal with the chief," she interrupted, her tone leaving no room for argument. "That is me." Something about her struck Weston as familiar, though he couldn't place what. He found himself unable to look away as she spoke clearly and forcefully about her people's needs and rights, demonstrating an education and diplomatic skill that clearly surprised the town officials. The negotiations seemed to reach an impasse when the sheriff, a hard man named Darby with no love for Indians, joined the conversation. "Your people killed 2 settlers last spring," he accused. "Renegades, not under tribal authority," Jana responded evenly. "Just as the 3 Apache women murdered last winter were not killed by your authority, yet by your people." The tension in the air thickened. Weston found himself moving closer, drawn by an instinct he couldn't name. Sheriff Darby's hand drifted toward his gun. "You're mighty bold for a squaw." In the instant before violence erupted, Weston stepped forward. "The lady is correct, Sheriff. Those murders were the work of the Blackwell brothers from over Helena Way. They were caught and hanged for it in April." All eyes turned to him. Jana Blackfoot's gaze fixed on him, her expression changing from surprise to intense scrutiny. "Young," she said softly. "Weston Young." The recognition in her voice confused him until she touched the small scar on her ankle, visible between her moccasin and legging. "Little dear," he breathed, understanding washing over him. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "I go by my adult name now. I told you I would not forget." The standoff diffused by this unexpected connection. Jana persuaded the mayor to adjourn the talks until morning. As the delegation prepared to make camp outside town, she approached Weston. "You have aged well, Wolf Hunter," she said, using a name he'd never heard. Wolf Hunter, it is what my people have called you these 15 years. Her dark eyes, intelligent and assessing, studied his face. Your ranch has never been raided, your cattle never stolen. Did you never wonder why? Weston had wondered, but had attributed it to luck and location. I'm just a rancher minding my own business. You saved the chief's daughter when others would have left her to die. She glanced around at the townspeople, watching them suspiciously. Perhaps we could speak somewhere less observed? Against his better judgment, against 15 years of deliberate isolation, Weston invited her and her advisors to his ranch for the night. It's more comfortable than camping, and I have plenty of room in the barn for your men. My advisors, not my men, she corrected with quiet amusement. 2 are women. They rode out as the sun began its descent, the delegation following Weston's wagon at a respectful distance. At the ranch, he employed 3 now, washed wide-eyed as he welcomed the Apache party. While her people settled in the barn, Jana accepted Weston's invitation to share the evening meal in his house. The cabin of his youth had expanded into a proper home, with 4 rooms and furnishings that, while simple, spoke of permanence and care. Over venison stew, they bridged 15 years of separate lives. After you brought me back, I was different, Jana explained, sitting straight-backed in his kitchen chair. I had seen the white man's world. My father sent me to the mission school, against many traditions, because he believed our people would need to understand your ways to survive. Weston listened, fascinated by how the frightened child had grown into this commanding woman with her high cheekbones, penetrating eyes, and hair like a river of black silk flowing down her back. When my father died last winter, the council named me chief, not without opposition. Her voice held no apology or uncertainty. Some believe a woman cannot lead. I am proving them wrong. And your husband agrees with this arrangement? Weston asked, immediately regretting the presumption. Jana's laugh was unexpected and musical. I have no husband. My position makes me challenging for most men to accept. Something shifted in the air between them, a recognition of shared solitude, though chosen for different reasons. And you? She asked. No wife in this fine house you have built. Weston shook his head. The frontier is no place for family attachments. I learned that early. Yet you have built all this. Her gesture encompassed his expanded ranch. For whom, if not family? Her question struck at something he had avoided examining too closely. Before he could formulate a response, a commotion outside drew their attention. 3 riders approached, led by Sheriff Darby, clearly intoxicated and looking for trouble. Young, he shouted. We heard you're harboring that Indian delegation. The town council wants them back, where we can keep an eye on them. Weston stepped onto his porch, rifle casually in hand. They're my guests, Darby. On my private property. Indian lover. One of Darby's companions spat. Maybe you're the one been telling them our weaknesses all these years. Return to town, Weston said evenly. You're drunk and making accusations you'll regret come morning. Darby's hand moved to his gun. We're taking the Indians back to town. Especially that woman chief. Got some questions for her. From the shadows of the barn, Jana's advisors emerged, weapons ready but waiting. Jana herself appeared beside Weston, dignity intact despite the danger. Your sheriff seems eager to violate the very peace talks he is meant to support, she observed coolly. Weston made a swift decision, stepping subtly in front of her. Darby, you're on my land. Leave now, sleep it off, and we'll all pretend this foolishness never happened. For a tense moment, violence balanced on a knife's edge. Then Darby's companion, the more sober of the 3, grabbed his arm. Come on. Not worth getting shot over. With curses and threats, they finally retreated. Weston watched until they disappeared down the road before turning to find Jana studying him with an unreadable expression. You placed yourself between me and danger, she said. Why? The question penetrated deeper than he expected. Instinct, I suppose. The same instinct that made you ride toward a child's scream 15 years ago. Her voice was gentle but probing. Perhaps your belief about attachments is not as firm as you claim. Later, as moonlight painted silver paths across his land, Weston found Jana outside, gazing at the mountains. Your land is beautiful, she said without turning. It sits at the meeting of 2 worlds. As do you, he replied, surprising himself with the observation. She turned then, her profile outlined in moonlight. Yes, neither fully accepted in either. It is a difficult position, but perhaps a necessary one. Weston moved to stand beside her, someone who understands both sides. Their conversation lasted deep into the night, ranging from practical matters of cattle breeding to philosophy and the future of their respective peoples. Weston found himself speaking of things he had never shared: his parents' deaths, his fears, his lonely vigils during harsh winters. Jana listened without judgment, offering her own stories in return: the challenge of leading as a woman, the resistance of traditionalists to necessary change, her vision for her people's survival in a changing world. When dawn broke, something fundamental had shifted between them. A connection forged in an instant of rescue had somehow deepened into something neither had anticipated. The delegation departed after breakfast, continuing to town to resume negotiations. Jana paused before mounting her horse. "Will you come to the talks?" she asked. "Your voice carries weight in town, and we could use an ally." Weston had spent 15 years avoiding entanglement in affairs beyond his fence line. Yet he found himself nodding. "I'll be there." Over the following weeks, Weston surprised himself and the townspeople by becoming an active participant in the treaty discussions. His respected position as a successful rancher gave him influence with the town council, while his unexpected connection to Jana gave him credibility with the Apache delegation. The negotiations progressed, but so too did something else: a fragile bond between a man who believed attachment meant vulnerability and a woman whose responsibilities left little room for personal connection. They found moments away from the formal talks, riding together to inspect boundaries, sharing meals at his ranch, conversations that stretched into the night. Jana's intelligence, courage, and vision challenged everything Weston had believed about protecting himself from involvement. "Your people need certainty about hunting access through the northern pass," Weston said one evening as they reviewed maps spread across his table. "And your people need assurance that settlements won't be raided," Jana countered. "We can provide that, but we need the hunting grounds. Without them, winter will bring starvation." Weston studied the map, then made a bold suggestion. "What if part of my land became a neutral zone? I control the creek access to the northern hunting grounds. I could formalize permission for your people to cross." Jana looked up sharply. "You would do this?" "It makes practical sense," he said, though they both recognized it was more than practicality driving the offer. The treaty took shape gradually, with Weston's unprecedented offer forming its cornerstone. Yet as the agreement neared completion, the unspoken question between them grew more pressing. What would happen when the negotiations concluded and Jana returned to her people? The answer came suddenly and violently one evening as Weston rode back to town after checking his herd. Gunshots echoed from the direction of the Apache camp outside town. He spurred his horse forward, dread clawing at his chest. He arrived to find chaos: 3 Apache wounded, the camp in disarray. Jana's advisor, an older woman named Morning Sky, clutched a bleeding arm. "Where is Chief Jana?" Weston demanded, dismounting. "Taken," Morning Sky spat. "Sheriff Darby and 5 men. They said she bewitched you and the council, that they would not be bound by any treaty with a woman chief." Weston's blood ran cold. "Which way?" "North, toward Devil's Canyon." Her eyes held his. "They were drunk, Wolf Hunter. They spoke of things no woman should endure." Weston didn't wait for more. He gathered his rifle and ammunition, refused offers of accompaniment from the wounded warriors, and rode north at a dangerous pace. His mind, usually so disciplined, filled with images of what drunk, hateful men might do to a woman they considered both inferior and threatening. The truth he had been denying for weeks crystallized with terrible clarity. He had fallen in love with Jana Blackfoot. His carefully constructed walls had crumbled beneath her quiet strength and wisdom. And now, the very attachment he had feared might cost her life. He tracked them to an abandoned mining cabin in Devil's Canyon, a place with a dark reputation from the early gold rush days. The moon was high when he approached, moving silently through pine shadows. Through the cabin's single dirty window, he counted 4 men, including Sheriff Darby. Jana sat bound to a chair, her face bruised but her posture unbowed. Even captive, she maintained her dignity. Darby paced before her, waving a bottle. "Treaty will never happen now. By morning, your warriors will have attacked us in revenge for your disappearance, and we'll have all the excuse we need to drive your people off for good." My people will not break the peace, Jana replied steadily. They follow my orders, even in my absence. Then they'll die waiting for you to return. Another man laughed. Weston had heard enough. He circled to the rear of the cabin, finding a second entrance, a root cellar door. Silently, he descended into the darkness beneath the cabin floor, feeling his way forward until he found the trapdoor that would lead into the cabin itself. Above, the conversation continued. Maybe we should show the Indian princess what real men are like before we finish this, one of the men suggested, his meaning unmistakable. Weston exploded through the trapdoor, rifle firing even as he emerged. The first kidnapper fell immediately, a second stumbling back with a shoulder wound. Darby and the fourth man dove for cover, returning fire. Young, Darby shouted. You're dead for this. I warned you to leave her alone, Weston replied, ducking behind an overturned table as bullets splintered the wood around him. In the chaos, Jana had worked one hand free. She kicked hard at the wounded man approaching her, sending him sprawling. The gunfight was brief but devastating. When silence finally fell, Darby and one of his men lay dead. The other two survived, one wounded, one surrendering with hands raised. Weston rushed to Jana, cutting her bonds with shaking hands. Are you hurt? He asked, eyes scanning her for injuries. No more than shows, she answered, touching her bruised cheek. You came for me. Of course I came. The words felt torn from somewhere deep inside him, even knowing it might mean your death. Her dark eyes searched his face. Especially then. He helped her stand, steadying her when she swayed slightly. I was wrong, Jana. All these years, thinking attachment was weakness. It's what gives us strength. They secured the surviving kidnappers and rode double on Weston's horse back to town, where the truth of what had happened quickly emerged. Darby's conspiracy unraveled as his companions confessed, desperate to save themselves from hanging. The treaty negotiations resumed with new urgency and sincerity. 2 weeks later, with autumn painting the mountains gold and crimson, representatives from both sides gathered to sign a historic agreement establishing peace, trading rights, and passage permissions, with Weston's land officially designated as neutral territory. The night after the signing, Jana came to Weston's ranch. They stood together on his porch, watching the sunset paint the distant peaks. I return to my people tomorrow, she said. Weston nodded, feeling the weight of unspoken words between them. And I will be here. Always separate, she murmured. It doesn't have to be. The words emerged before he could reconsider them. Jana, I've spent my life believing that caring for someone was a vulnerability I couldn't afford. When I heard those gunshots and thought I might lose you, I realized how wrong I've been. She turned to him, moonlight silvering her face. What are you saying, Wolf Hunter? I'm saying that I love you. The declaration felt both terrifying and liberating. I'm saying that I don't want to go back to isolation, to pretending that being alone makes me strong. Our worlds are different, she reminded him gently. I have responsibilities to my people, and I respect that. He took her hands in his. But perhaps we can build something new, not fully your world or mine, but a meeting place between them. Like this land. A marriage between a rancher and an Apache chief. Jana's smile held both wonder and pragmatism. It would scandalize both our peoples, and perhaps show them another way forward. Weston drew her closer. Your people need the security this agreement provides. My life needs the purpose and meaning you've shown me is possible. Jana was silent for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. There would be opposition. Challenges. We've faced worse. Her smile deepened. Yes, we have. Their kiss beneath the Montana stars sealed more than a personal commitment. It represented a bridge between worlds, built on respect and a love neither had expected to find. Montana Territory, 1895. The trading post at the crossroads of Weston Young's ranch had grown into a thriving center of commerce, where settlers and Apache alike conducted business in peace. The 15 years since the treaty had not been without challenges, but the union that many had predicted would fail had instead flourished into something remarkable. Weston, now in his 50s with fully silver hair, but still straight-backed and strong, stood on the porch of their expanded home. Beside him, Jana, as regal at 40 as she had been at 25, watched their twin 14-year-old sons lead a group of mixed Apache and settler children in a horseback racing game. Thomas has your seat on a horse, Weston observed, pride evident in his voice. And Joseph has your stubbornness, Jana countered with affection. Their marriage had scandalized both communities initially, but the practical benefits had gradually overcome prejudice. Jana had maintained her position as chief while establishing their home on Weston's land. Together, they had created something unprecedented, a place where two cultures met in mutual respect rather than conflict. Jana now divided her time between tribal leadership and their family, while Weston had become an unexpected diplomat, respected by both sides for his fairness and insight. Their sons were being raised with knowledge of both heritages, educated in two traditions, prepared to navigate a changing world. The army representatives arrive tomorrow for the treaty renewal, Jana reminded him. The governor is sending his assistant as well. Weston nodded. 15 years of peace. Many said it couldn't last a season. Many said we couldn't last a season, Jana replied with a smile, reaching for his hand. Their fingers intertwined, weathered and strong, like their bond, tested by prejudice and practical challenges, but ultimately unbreakable. Looking out over their land, neither fully white nor fully Apache territory, but something new and hopeful, Weston reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From a lonely rancher saving a frightened child to a man who had found family, purpose, and love when he least expected it. I was so certain that the frontier demanded isolation, he said softly, that caring for others was a weakness that would destroy me. Jana squeezed his hand, and I believed I could only serve my people by remaining apart. We were both wrong in the same way. The sound of children's laughter floated up from the valley, their sons and the next generation of both peoples, growing up without the bitter divisions of the past. It was the sound of a future neither Weston nor Jana could have imagined alone. Wolf Hunter and Chief, Jana mused, using the names their shared community had given them. Who would have thought that day by the wolf tree that we would build this life? Weston drew her close, savoring the warmth of her presence. I'm grateful every day that I heard a child scream and couldn't ride away. As the sun set behind the mountains they both loved, Weston and Jana Young Blackfoot stood together, proof that even on the harshest frontier, love could not only survive, but transform the very landscape itself. The forgotten rancher and the Apache girl had created something neither could have built alone, a bridge between worlds, strong enough to carry future generations toward a better horizon.